Are we all relatively comfortable at the back? If you can see a seat, sit on it. You can grab another one, sit on that too. Okay.
I'll be back.
You will be back, is that a promise? Okay, for those who don't know, Alan Fredericks is my name and I'm the president of the Thredbo Historical Society, and we run the museum next door, which you've all just traversed through to get into the food and the drinks. Didn't take you long to get through, I have to say, it was pretty quick. But my first duty tonight is to welcome some VIPs, that I'd like to call them. One of them has just left the room, Graham Holloway, one of our life members. We have two life members of the Society here tonight. Graham Holloway, many of you know Graham, and same number would know the other life member, Frank Prahoda. So I'll always like to welcome those two. I do have one sad message to say, and that is just to let you know that we lost one of our members in the last 24 hours, Ivo Jubler. And obviously our thoughts are with his wife Hannah. To all the other guests here today, thank you for making the effort to come along, our Historical Society members, but I think you've been outnumbered by the snowboarders who made the effort to get here, or with a snowboard background. I don't know whether they're still snowboarding, but they've made the effort, and I'd have to tell you, this is a record number of people we've had at one of these opening Thredbo cocktail events when we launch our new museum exhibition. A couple of special guests I need to let you know who are joining us tonight. Richard Burton, is Richard here? Thank you, Richard. Bob Dixon, the chairman of New South Wales Snowboard. Has Bob arrived yet? Not here yet, and I believe his treasurer Kathy Lambert, treasurer of New South Wales Snowboard, probably coming with him, so they might be halfway up the Alpine Way. Adrian Gibbs, our guest speaker, will have a special introduction for you, Adrian, a little bit later. Jeff Lang, is Jeff here yet? I haven't met him. Where's Jeff? Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Lang, a Victorian retailer of snowboards, gear, and a friend of Adrian, has made the effort to come up from Victoria. Thank you, Jeff. Nick McLaughlin, the hotel manager here. Thanks, Nick, very much for the assistance in giving us this room, because we overflow, not too many people now for the museum, so we do need an overflow space. Thank you, and your staff who've helped us set up. Thank you very much. And welcome to Stuart Diver, the resort operations manager. He was here a minute ago, I don't know where he is now. He's
gone for a beer.
Gone for a beer, thank you. He's got his priorities right. And there's some special mention of some of the younger members of our snowboarding community, I presume, who are here today with family. So welcome to all those people who have shown on my list as children, so welcome. Okay. Just with a bit of background for those who might be here for their first time, each year we change the exhibition in the museum. Well, we change about 25% of it, the other 75% is fairly consistent, but we like to have a theme every year. This year the theme is the 30-year anniversary of snowboards in Thredbo, and again the section of the museum has been set up specifically to recognise and honour that, and already getting very keen interest. But that doesn't happen overnight. That's only happened because our museum administrator, Chrissy Webb. Chrissy, where are you? Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. Chrissy Webb, who puts a lot of effort into that, with a bit of support from other people, but the feet on the ground, the hands on the ground is Chrissy Webb, and I'd like to thank you very much for your efforts, Chrissy. Okay, there's a bit of housekeeping for those who are here for the first time. Out the door you've come in, there's some toilets, male and female, just out through the back door there. Careful of the door, I think it's open all the time, but sometimes if you're on your own, it can lock behind you. No trouble getting in. but I think it's propped open for tonight. We will have some nice hot finger food later on this evening. It will come in, and we've been very much helped, particularly by Ed Denny with the refreshments over there on the table, who's provided those for guests here tonight.
And Lynn Templey, who's provided.
I'm going to go through a long list in a minute, and your name too. Just a couple of Thredbo Historical Society matters that I just want to bring to your attention, seeing I've got you as a captive audience with doors locked. We're in the process of producing a book, a coffee table style quality book. It's in production, mainly on the legends and pioneers of Thredbo, but will carry right through to the 10 community groups that have sprung up here over the 60 years. Next year is the 60th anniversary of Thredbo, and we'll be launching it next year about this time. One launch in Thredbo, and there'll be another launch in Sydney for our Sydney members. So just look out for that coming up. We do have a members recognition program for those members who've now achieved 20 years of continued membership with us, and also 15 years continued membership. Now that's important to us. We only exist because the members support us. Without our members we wouldn't exist and do the things that we do achieve. Some things we don't quite achieve, some of the goals we set out, but your membership is most important to us, and we have a recognition program which we're going to feature at our midwinter dinner coming up in July, 20th of July, upstairs in the Kosciuszko room, where all of those people will be acknowledged. I think I'm just about through that. I just want to tell my own little story about, well, I'll let you decide whether it's snowboarding or not. When I was a young fellow, and that was quite a while ago, grew up in Kiama, and I reckon I had the first Malibu surfboard in Kiama in 1960, although that's been superseded. Someone else reckons one of my mates had it before me, so I know how that works. Long story short, the surf club, we all went up to Port Kembla RSL Club, which is just near Rennick's Gap. It used to exist on Rennick's Gap going up to Perisher Road. It doesn't exist anymore. They've knocked it down and moved it into the Perisher Village. But I decided, because this surfboard had so many dings against the rocks, it was about a 9-foot Malibu, balsa, cedar stringer up the middle, cedar fit, one fin. So we knocked the fin off it, put it on top of the car, brought it down here to the Perisher side. My brother, younger brother, and my mates from the surf club, we went up to, I think we must have gone up to Smiggins to try and learn to ski. We were absolute agricultural style, not RV. But we took the surfboard up there, took it off, had a nice long rope tied to the bumper bar on the way home back to the club. On the road, it was about 4 inches of snow, mixed with gravel and grit. It wasn't sealed then. Pulling down the road, back down to Rennick's Gap. Of course, we didn't make it. Nothing to guide us, no fin. The board was like that, and we were on and off it. We actually ended up dumping it over the side of the ravine somewhere. I don't know where. If David Attenborough comes along and finds it, I don't know what he'll make of it. But that was our first attempt at snowboarding on a Malibu. I'm going to hear some of Adrian's a little bit later on.
That sounded more like towing surfing, Alan.
I think you're right. We didn't know the difference, so Adrian.
No, but I meant you were the first towing surfer.
Oh, right. It didn't work. Well, I can tell you that. It didn't work. Well, my younger brother, he went on about 5 years later, became the mayor of Kiama, and he got, by his mates, they really pumped him on that all the time. You know, what are you doing on a board on the main road going down from Perisher down to Rennick's Gap? Okay, we have an important guest here. I'm just going to ask Graham Holloway to come forward and say a few words and introduce Adrian. Thanks, Graham.
Well, thank you very much. power of the internet and social media. My association with snowboarding is in the mid-80s. A young man called Jeff Sawyer came into the shop with Richard Burton Works with 5 of these boards, and I started renting them, and then I eventually moved to Thredbo and was at Friday Flat with 500 boards in rental. So I've had the pleasure of taking a lot of money off a lot of snowboarders over many years and giving it to my boss. But I look at that as sport fishing. It's the joy of the sale that counts. But I've never snowboarded. But anyhow, Adrian was one of these guys who came in with Jeff into Snow Mountain Sports from the Aspen Hotel, which is now called Banjo. And they started talking about snowboarding and looking like snowboarders. And they were, you could say that on the mountain they weren't exactly popular. And amongst some of the skiing community, and I'm a skier, but I welcome them with some of my mates, and not so friendly. So I welcome all the snowboarders and the skiers here tonight. And Adrian, it's over to you. I've said enough, and good luck, Adrian.
Oh, I'm getting old. I've got to use these now.
Still got a ponytail.
And please, something good to be said about good genes, isn't there? I'm just lucky. Look, hello and good evening, everyone. Please bear with me. I'm not a guest speaker by any means, but I've been asked to do this, so I have to read a little bit sometimes. Well, 30 years of snowboarding at Thredbo this year. I think from memory it was the 30th of June 1986 that Jeff and I became the first snowboard instructors at Thredbo. And I must say I'm feeling very humbled and honoured and in awe, just knowing the hardships and hard work of people before us and what they achieved, the true pioneers of skiing in Australia to make this all possible today. I mean, those guys, you know, worked incredibly so that we could ski on this mountain. Now, there's a few major thank yous to be said, straight up. I'd like to thank the Thredbo Historic Society, Alan and Graham, for inviting me here today. I'd like to thank Perisher for banning me in 1986. And I'd like to thank Thredbo for being so accepting. And I'd also like to thank the fact that I met Jeff Sawyer in 1985. Ultimately, the godfather of snowboarding in Australia. And just over the last couple of months, I don't have a lot to do with Facebook, but I think there's about 3 or 4 other godfathers of snowboarding in Australia due to, or according to Facebook. But anyway, you get that, don't you? If it wasn't for meeting him, I wouldn't be standing here now. I've been asked to tell you how snowboarding started in Australia. So I hope that you'll all appreciate that I can only tell you my own version and how it happened for me. Can anyone here tell me when they think snowboarding started in Australia?
70s?
83.
Well, that's all good.
Today made a movie yet, Thredbo. Matt Young. I was going to say the movie that he made out here.
No, that's as far as I know, in 30 years of snowboarding and talking to people and trying to find out about the history of snowboarding. What I have worked out is that there's a lot of controversy. And to my knowledge, there was someone snowboarding in Tasmania around about the mid-70s. So that's as early as I can go back. There was some mad surfer with long hair trying to snowboard in Tasmania in the mid-70s. I know that Stephen Lee, Australia's downhill legend, skier from the 70s and 80s from Falls Creek. He brought a snowboard into Falls Creek in 1978. In the early 80s, Jeff Lang, who's here tonight from Victoria, he started making snowboards in the early 80s, and around about the same time in New South Wales, Carey Pogson from New South Wales started making boards. In 1984, I took one of Carey's boards. He also he'd been making skateboards, snowboards and surfboards. We were trying to make everything. So I took one of his winter stick type snowboards to Smiggin's Hole. And I think it was in about 84. And I tried to ride it at Smiggin's. It didn't have any metal edges. And our snow conditions in Australia are generally hard packed. So I couldn't ride the board with much control, and I ended up knee deep in a creek. Anyway, that's another story. Oh, it's tedious, this writing. And around the same time, Jeff Lang, Thor, Dave Pavlich, Daniel Monahan, Paul Candelo, they were doing the same sort of thing in Victoria. Now this is when I met Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Jeff Sawyer in 1985, and we snowboarded. My first attempt on a board with metal edges was at Mount Perisher. Now, not long after we did this, I introduced Jeff to Carey, who was a close friend of mine. And with Jeff as president, the three of us formed the New South Wales Snowboard Association, and Jeff was the instigator behind this association. I remember he came round to my parents' place and we had a little meeting. It was quite official, and he's showing us the snowboards that he brought into the country. And then all of a sudden he's whipped out these forms and said, right, we're going to start an association, but I need you two because I need a secretary and a treasurer. You've got to sign here. And I looked at Carey, he looked at me, and are we signing our life away here? Anyway, we started the New South Wales Snowboard Association. And the three of us then, the next year, decided to travel to India, Gulmarg in America. Jeff was going to attempt an altitude record in the Himalayas in Kashmir. And Tom Stankovic and Dave McGinniskin, a couple of movie makers, they were going to film us and make a movie called Ski High, Ski Himalayas. After that, we travelled to America to compete in the US Open Snowboarding Championships in Vermont. For me, this is unbelievable. I've been thrown in the deep end after approximately 4 hours of snowboarding in here in Australia. I'm in the Greater Himalayas, way above sea level, surrounded by about 2 metres of snowfall every day for the next 4 weeks. Talk about inexperience, but this is where I learnt to ride a snowboard. I relate it to throwing a 3-month-old baby into the ocean and asking it to go body surfing. And anyway, what an experience that trip was. I learnt to snowboard in the Himalayas, competed in the US Open in Vermont. After 4 weeks of snowboarding, I placed 79th in the world and Jeff placed 63rd in the world out of about 120 competitors. And we hung out with the Burton snowboard team, and I met Jake Burton Carpenter and Tom Sims and all these legends of snowboarding in America. So after that trip, snowboarding was etched into my soul because of my skateboarding and surfing background, and now surfing on snow. May '86 saw the three of us at the ski show, Homebush Bay in Sydney, doing 3 demonstrations a day on a perma-slope. First media attention and the first time the general public got to see snowboarding. The main idea of setting up the Snowboard Association was to allow snowboarding in Australian resorts as a controllable and directional ski device. This was their major problem with having them passed, and just in the early days they thought we were crazy. They didn't want to. They didn't want snowboarders. They thought it was, you know, dangerous. So that's when it happened, on the 30th of June 1986. Jeff and myself became the first snowboard instructors at Thredbo. For 1 week prior, they allowed us to compete in the ski instructor's prerequisite course, and we were on our snowboards. We passed, we're employed, and as snowboard instructors, away we went. During that season, Jeff and myself gained more media attention with a few TV segments and movies, and snowboarding started to become known. During that season, excuse me, during that season is when I met so many people. So many people, lots of great people. Still know them today, after 30 years. Guys like Cal Goodman, Dave Kelly, Andy Downing, Stewie Hill, Bart Joseph, Richard and Bruce Burton, of course. Richard was at 1987. I went to Richard and said, I want you to sponsor me. But it certainly sounds to me like he got you $500 worth. We'll talk about that later. But it was people like this that shaped how snowboarding ended up today. There's too many to list. Darren Powell, sitting behind Richard. He went on and he's become very famous as the fastest man in the world on a snowboard. And I class Darren as probably my best friend. I've known Darren for a long time now.
And the slowest straight plane jump. I'm sorry. Sorry, Dad.
Margot, there's no need to be personal. But you can imagine during that season it was at our age, it was a time of just fun. We knew that the skiers were up here and they were here for a long time before us, and they didn't like us. They didn't like us. Well, they pretended not to like us because they didn't really have much choice. As I kept saying to a lot of people, we're a nation of surfers. We're surrounded by the ocean. Australians are known as beach people. So it was quite obvious that snowboarding was always going to be inevitable. And I have so many more stories that I could stand here and tell you. I could tell you about how I once was trying to teach the resort managers, and I'm not going to mention any names, but the resort manager at Perisher.
Oh, we want to know.
I was trying to teach his nephew how to snowboard, and he didn't want to know about it. He stopped the lift with me on the lift. You get down off that lift, I'm not getting off the lift. You'll have to send me to the top because I'm not walking back to the resort. Your nephew can walk back, but I'm not walking back. At the end of the day, he didn't want snowboarding at Perisher, and it meant more than family to him. And that's why we went to Thredbo. After I'd snowboarded for 4 or 5 years and went back to Ulladulla, and I was probably in a little bit of pain too, because after 5 years of snowboarding, and I ended up jumping off cliffs and doing all sorts of crazy things, getting enticed by people like Les Herstik. Where are you, Les? When we're in South America. I want you to jump off that thing over there. What? No, you jump off it first. That's too high. Go and jump off it. You're the snowboard stunt man. All right, I'll go and have a look at it. Crazy. Anyway, went back to Ulladulla feeling very sore and sorry, and took my lovely dog for a walk down to the beach, checking the surf, coming back, and I walked into my newsagents to get my paper. And I turned around and there's the resort manager standing behind the counter. And I went, "What are you doing here?" "I just bought the newsagents." he said to me, "Do you live here?" I said, "Yes. I've been surfing here since I was 16 and you want to sell papers?" And anyway, it was a very funny experience. I said, "You're not selling any papers." Anyway, I have so many funny stories. I started writing a book actually. And I called it The History of Snowboarding in Australia by Adrian Gibbs, aged 29 3/4 for the rest of his life. But unfortunately I started and I've written about 25,000 words and I'm only up to 1994. So I guess it'll never be published. Anyway, for me, this was the start of snowboarding in Australia, this period. 86, 87, snowboarding really started progressing. As I said, Richard picked me up and sponsored me, and guys were doing their own thing, and companies were starting to come on board, and obviously they could see the potential of this sport. So anyway, that was the start of snowboarding for me. This is why we're here today, 30 years later, so everyone can tell their own stories.
Cheers to that and everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, the mountains.
I'm so
Thank you,
glad.
the people.
I'm so glad to be in the presence of all of you people, and in the presence of the skiing fraternity, because you're all, and skiing people, they're all really good people. They've all, you know, generally speaking.
Thank you,
Margot, I said generally speaking. What I'm trying to say is we're all environmental people, and we all are concerned for you know, the well-being of people and the planet. That's what I've found in the ski industry, and it's very refreshing. Where are we here? I think I've pretty much said what I want to say.
Excellent, let's have a drink.
I'd really like to also thank, he's not here tonight, but the reason that I'm also here tonight is because of Jordan Rogers, the CEO of Thredbo. I rang him last year and I just said that my name was Adrian Gibbs and I wanted a meeting, and I had a good idea for him for next year. And he said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "I appreciate you're a busy man. Next week I can fit you in." Oh, great. I introduced myself when I met him, told him that I became the first snowboard instructor here at Thredbo 30 years ago, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you mean to tell me that Thredbo had the first snowboard instructors 30 years ago here?" I said, "That's exactly right." And anyway, at the end of the day, he's grabbed the fact that I wanted to celebrate the history of snowboarding, and he's going to put on this festival this year on the 16th, 17th and 18th of September.
Yeah.
So I want everybody, even the skiing fraternity, to spread the word. Let's have a big party
Fucking oath.
celebrating the fact that Thredbo were the first people to accept it, and here today now they're embracing it by putting on a festival and celebrating that fact. So I've got to thank Jordan Rogers, the CEO of Thredbo, Stewie Diver, and Philip Lay, all the Thredbo people. They're going to work hard and put on this festival. Well, where am I up to? I'll finish off by saying I've got to thank I thank the skiing fraternity for reluctantly accepting snowboarders, knuckle draggers. And Alan, Graham, thank you for putting a section in your museum, because for me it's funny, 30 years may be a long time, but I can't help but go into that museum and look back at the wall and look at the skis and look at what people were doing 100 years before me. You know, and that's why I'm in awe of your little museum, your humble little museum, and I'm so happy to donate the gear that I had, that I was riding back in 1986, and for you to embrace that. So thank you again.
Well, you know, you're still riding it now.
You can still ride that, look. And that was Sean Palmer's first downhill board when he was 16. And I picked this up in South America, in Bariloche. Some guy couldn't ride it. And you can wonder why. And I took one look at it and said, I said, I want to ride it. Anyway, I ended up picking that up. But it's ended up being quite a famous board because Sean Palmer went on and became a very famous snowboarder in the circle of snowboarding in America. And we used to call him Mini Shred. That was when I met him. He was a 16-year-old grommet that didn't know anything but snowboarding. He was an incredible guy, he's an incredible athlete. But that was his board, yeah. So yeah, I've donated that stuff, and once again, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of Adrian before he takes a seat? Any questions? Thank you.
Anyone want to ask?
Thank you,
Any questions?
Trevor at the back.
I want to know what Herschel's objection was to snowboarding. What's that?
How do I respond to that?
What else can you say?
The results manager didn't get on.
What can you say?
I guess in response to that, I worked as a liftie, so I did know the man. I don't know. I think his main problem was that I'd bought a ticket and I'm snowboarding on his hill. No one has ever done this before. He freaked out. He was about this tall. I used to call him a pipsqueak. His name was Rick, and that's I'm not saying anymore. But we used to call him a pipsqueak. He wasn't a very nice man. And somebody knew him. But I think his main problem was he thought they were dangerous and he didn't want to know about snowboarding in parachute. The thing that really got me was that I was with his nephew. It wasn't like I was with Darren Powell or someone.
The one-piece fluoro suit you were wearing.
What about Carl and Guthiger? Carl Gunter.
Carl and Guthiger.
Yeah.
I didn't have much to do with
Because
Carl.
they were actually really that's where we could board. Was
Yeah.
Guthiger for the period.
Well, for me,
Carl, yeah, he was cool with it.
I'm
He
going
was
to be
the
very,
only one.
very open and honest with you now. Thredbo weren't very happy with Jeff and I either because we were always snowboarding out of bounds. And they were always sending the patrols after us.
But that's because we're all filming.
Quiet, we just didn't hear that one. Could we have that one again?
Pardon, Jim?
There's still resorts in America that still ban snowboarders.
That's right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when snowboarding started, it was the youth. And the youth are always going to be wild and young and a bit reckless, and that's just what it was.
I think Jimmy's hit the nail on the head there in regards to why he didn't want snowboards at Perisher. But at the end of the day, good on him because Thredbo opened their arms and they loved it. And here we are today. I just wanted to say though, after 2 or 3 years here, I met Stewie Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And that was in 1988, and I ended up sharing some accommodation with him, and he said to me, you should come up to Blue Cow. And in 88 I ended up taking snowboards up to Blue Cow then, because snowboarding wasn't up there. And
Adrian, we've got another couple of questions up the front.
hang on, pardon?
When they, there's old stickers saying snowboarding was better than when they hate this. But the funny thing is, when the old straight skis around, the ski industry was actually taking a bit of a dive, and basically all of a sudden they stole our side cuts and realised they can have fun. And
That's what we have car skis today.
It's all about those skis.
They are. That's
Can
quite
I
a good
say something,
thesis on it.
please? The first snowboard park, I can't usually do public speaking because obviously I've had a couple of beers.
Hill, giant slalom, dual slalom, So we were doing the same disciplines as skiers. It was in 1988ish that we started trying to build half pipes. Although we did attempt one at the first one, didn't we, Cal? 87? We attempted to do one, but we weren't successful because we had shovels. We were trying to, and we were just making a kicker, if you know what a kicker is. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I need to clarify, everyone, that's Peter Chittleborough, that's not me. Just so everybody knows.
Yeah, Adrian?
Yes.
The shape of snowboards, did they follow the shape of surfboards, like pintails and slidetails and all that? At all?
Well, and in the early days they were, because the very early snowboards were designed to be ridden in powder snow. They weren't designed to be ridden in hard pack conditions or groomed runs. They were made out of plywood, and it was quite thick plywood, but they had an edge on them, but not a metal edge. So they were trying to make a surfboard in the snow. And yeah, snowboarding in powder snow, I call it two different types of snowboarding. Snowboarding in powder snow is back foot snowboarding. It's surfing. You are surfing. You are in this much snow and you can't feel it. It's like being in water. And you're going into it and out of it and into it and out of it. Hard packed is like skiing on a snowboard. Thank you for that acknowledgement. I appreciate it.
When did you first get rid of your poles?
Yeah, that's one thing I found funny, seeing Jeff with bloody poles.
Yeah. I've got a flash drive. Kerry gave me a flash drive. He ended up... He found some old photos of Jeff and I and Kerry when we were using poles. We got rid of them very quickly, I can tell you.
Yeah, when I told him to get rid of them, you looked stupid coming
In the film. In the beginning, we were using them as a walking device more than a device for snowboarding. We were using them to get back up the hill. And they're also a handy deterrent.
Okay, we need
But
to...
also, the snowboarding, you remember the carving boards they had, which were ideal for hard snow?
Well, I was the first one to ride them.
That's right.
There was a bunch of guys here, Cowley, Darren, when they brought these new boards, longer boards, thin side cut, full race boards. Wayne used to ride a hard board. That's what I'm trying to say. In the early days, we were doing the same disciplines as skiers. When we started making half pipes, that's when soft board, soft boot snowboarding took off, because they wanted to skateboard in the snow. That's what I relate it to. Half pipe snowboarding is very, very similar to half pipe skateboarding, except you're in a different medium.
What about that mono ski that Nat Young used to come in?
What about that mono? I'm going to tell you a little story now about Mr. Nat Young. Nat imported 4,000 winter sticks, I think, but we just set up the New South Wales Snowboard Association, and unfortunately his boards were not a directional ski device. So we ended up banning winter sticks. Well, the resorts had to, because they needed snowboards to be safe on the mountain. And anything that didn't have a metal edge wasn't a directional ski device. So unfortunately for Nat, he had to take his winter sticks back to America. But yeah, no, I did some snowboarding with Nat and his wife. I think it was here at Thredbo actually, when he had the mono ski. He came up here with a mono ski for a couple of days, and we did a few turns and a few runs with those guys. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation in the in tonight. And I'd just like to, I've noticed he drinks a red. He likes a red, I think.
I don't mind a red.
So we have another one to match the one you've got. Thank you very much for your coming up from,
Thank you,
from
Al.
the coast. And
Thank
thanks for
you.
your most entertaining talk.
I hope you all enjoyed it. That's the facts. I can only tell you how it happened from me.
And that's how it was.
And it was a hell of a good time doing it.
Before you break,
I'm still having a good time.
before you break, folks, ladies and gents, Darren, display tonight. And up the top here it says, and you'll get a chance to look at this in the museum a bit later, Darren Powell, world record, Australia, 1999. Now I'm going to tell you the speed that he achieved. Look away if you get frightened. World record was 201 kilometres on this machine. Now we also have in our collection next door. Thank you. We also have in our collection next door from Les Herstik, his suit that he wore in establishing his world record. I need your help. Here, Les, what was the...
No, it wasn't a world record, I can tell you that much. No,
Australian record.
183 on the skis.
183 on 2 skis,
Yeah.
and that was set at
Albertville.
and he used to practice on standing on top of a car, you told me,
That's correct.
to get his balance.
And I'm just going to jump in so that you're all aware of another feat that Les did, which I found incredible. But that was skiing backwards in front of Tomba when the World Cup was on here. Les, that was one of the most incredible skiing feats I've seen.
Okay, I said I'd thank a few people before and I forgot about it, but I am going to go through that. The hospitality tonight has been supplied by Marion Nouri, Ray and Lynn Templey, Richard Gully Moore and Sally at the front desk, and our volunteers from the Museum and Historical Society. I'm now going to ask for some more volunteers. I'm going to command you all. We have to pick up the chairs and stack them against the back wall as best you can, or wherever you can find the wall, because we'll need the space to be able to serve the hot food, finger food. So if you wouldn't mind just collectively stacking those chairs, and thank you very much for your attendance.